From the dawn of civilization, something whispers among the ruins of time, a secret, a forgotten echo that reverberates within every human being, as if something essential had been torn from the fabric of reality. You feel it, even if you can't name it. There is a restlessness that dwells in the soul, a foreboding that the world we live in does not reveal the whole truth. Many call it intuition, others spiritual distress. But what is lost, when what should be remembered is buried by the dust of time? On this journey, we will traverse veils that were carefully placed to prevent humans from accessing a sacred trilogy that connects with their true essence, the three worlds, heaven, earth, and subconscious. For millennia, various traditions have tried to preserve the memory of these worlds, not as religious metaphors, but as interconnected spiritual realities that govern the structure of inner and outer life. Entire civilizations built their rituals, laws, and cultures based on this sacred tripod. From the ancient Egyptians to the Hindu Vedas, from the Orphic mysteries to the Toltec wisdom schools, all pointed to the same hidden truth. The human being is a traveler between worlds. But this route was disfigured, erased, and its spiritual cartography turned into superstition, dogma, or ridicule. What was philosophical gold became dust in the hands of those who lost the map of the soul. The mystery of the three worlds is not hidden outside of us, but buried beneath layers of conditioning. Over time, human beings have been distanced from their integral state. What was once a natural connection with heaven, the realm of elevated consciousness, and with earth, the space of the body and presence, has been fragmented. And the world of the subconscious, as rich as it is frightening, has been relegated to oblivion or fear. This division has caused the wound of separation. We have come to live only on the surface of what we are, denying both our divine origin and our dark roots. We live divided, dismembered. And this internal fracture leads us to seek meaning outside, when it has always been within. For centuries, certain manuscripts were secretly circulated among initiates, guardians of ancient wisdom. They recorded not just dogmas, but living instructions to reconnect the three worlds within the being. These texts were persecuted, burned, or hidden, and with them, part of humanity's manual was lost. This destruction was no accident. Knowledge that empowers is a threat to systems that profit from ignorance. When a human being discovers that they carry within them the bridge between heaven, earth, and subconscious, they become untamable. They free themselves from the prison of appearance and begin to walk with spiritual autonomy. This is the power they wanted to silence, but it resurfaces now, through you. What's at stake is not just self-knowledge. It's the reactivation of a sacred inner architecture. What's forgotten is the map of reconnection with the source of all that is. Each time you ignore this call, a fragment of your own completeness is lost. You can feel this when you look in the mirror and there's something missing, even though everything seems normal. The quest for the three worlds is not a mystical journey for a few, but an urgent need for those who feel that something is broken and needs to be healed. By rediscovering this knowledge, you stop walking in the dark and start to remember the route back home. The earth groans under the weight of human disconnection. The heavens fall silent to prayers without intention, and the subconscious writhes, filled with symbols not understood. We live in times of noise, but the voice of the ancients has not been silenced. It has merely migrated inward. It is in the recurring dreams, in the unexplained chills, in the questions that won't be silenced. It is in your pain and also in your desire to find meaning amidst the chaos. What we call the lost manuscript is not a physical book, but a revelation that resides in the lines between existence. When you observe a child looking at the sky, or an elder with bare feet on the ground, or an artist immersed in unconscious creation, there are glimpses of the three worlds in action, moments of wholeness that still manage to slip through the cracks of daily life. However, without structure and awareness, these moments dissipate like vapor. What we propose here is to remember, not as a nostalgic act, but as a strategic rescue. To remember is to reconstruct the path. And the first step begins by recognizing that this memory was taken from us, but not forever. Those who hold control over narratives have always tried to convince the world that reality is only what can be touched, measured, or calculated. They've built an empire of certainties to hide the realm of the invisible. However, even the most skeptical are visited by dreams that defy logic, by sensations that can't be explained. This is the whisper of the three worlds trying to break through the veil. Everything that has been separated now seeks reunification, and more people are feeling this call, like a magnet pulling the heart towards something that is yet to be named. The greatest trick was to convince the human being that they are alone, that they are disconnected from something bigger, from something essential. But this trick is failing. A quiet shift is happening. An increasing number of people have been feeling that their problems are not just emotional, but existential. It's not anxiety, it's a longing of the soul. It's not emptiness, it's the echo of a voice that was once heard in other times. It's not just a crisis, it's the threshold of a rebirth. The manuscript of the three worlds is the thread that sews these feelings towards a revelation. Throughout this video, you will be guided along an initiatory path that rekindles what has been extinguished. We will traverse each of the three worlds, not as tourists of esotericism, but as navigators of a broader reality. Heaven, earth, and the subconscious are not merely symbols. They are real dimensions of your being, portals that, when consciously accessed, completely transform the way you perceive yourself in the world. The journey will not be comfortable, but it will be liberating. And at the end of it, you may realize that what seemed lost, in fact, was always waiting for you. And if you've made it this far, it wasn't by chance. Something within you is ready. This narrative is awakening something you already know, but need to be reminded of. This is your chance to rediscover a piece of your own history that was left behind at some turn in time. And it all begins now, when you decide to open your heart to what the world tried to bury. The manuscript of the three worlds will not be handed to you. It will be revealed by you, at every stage, every memory, every awakening. Heaven, in most spiritual traditions, has never been just a place, but a state of being, a lofty plane of consciousness where the spirit remembers who it is, where there is no fragmentation, only unity. However, over the centuries, the concept of heaven has been hijacked by religious structures that have turned it into a distant, unattainable reward, subject to rules and punishments. This distortion has distanced human beings from the essential truth. Heaven is not out there, nor is it a promise after death. It is within, and it is a level of reality accessible while still breathing. To remember the first world is to understand that the sacred is not future, it is presence. In the worldview of ancient peoples, heaven was the domain of invisible causes, the home of gods, pure ideas, archetypes, and higher planes of existence. For the Egyptians, it was the realm of Ra, where the soul traveled at the end of the day. For the Mayans, it was Hunab-Ku, the galactic center from where all creation emanates. In Taoism, heaven, Tien, is the invisible axis that sustains universal harmony. In all these systems, heaven represents both the origin and the destination, but also the moment when the human being aligns with their eternal essence. This connection is possible here and now, but it requires intention, silence, and inner listening, the forgotten tools of the soul. Heaven is where clarity resides. When we access this world, mental noise and emotional chaos cease. Doubts give way to intuition. Pains transform into understanding. It's not a permanent state, but a frequency that can be cultivated. Deep meditation, sincere contemplation, and even certain states of poetic or artistic ecstasy are portals to this world. The challenge is that we have been trained to doubt what we feel. Logic and modern rationalism have convinced us that only what can be measured is real. As a result, we have lost the language of heaven, the silence laden with meaning, the subtle signs, the synchronicities that whisper greater truths. It is in this world that what many call the higher self resides, the part of us that never forgot who it is. It observes, guides, protects, but does not impose. It awaits our call, as its presence only manifests with consent. When we seek it, we open a bridge between our minds and universal intelligence. And this bridge is built from surrender. One does not reach heaven with arrogance, but with vibrant humility. It is necessary to silence the ego to hear the soul. It is in this world that great masters and prophets accessed visions, revelations, and codes that transformed civilizations. Not because they were special, but because they knew how to listen. The language of heaven is vibrational. It doesn't use words but frequencies. When we come into contact with this plane, we feel peace, clarity, unconditional love, a sense of home that transcends any physical place. But to feel, we need to clear the clogged channels of our perception. The overload of stimuli, information, desires manufactured by society blocks our attunement with this realm. Therefore, practices of stillness are revolutionary. Stopping is not a waste of time. It's returning to our original dwelling. In calmness, we access answers that were beyond the reach of logic. The angels, archetypes, and entities of the celestial plane are not childish myths, but symbolic representations of cosmic intelligences. Each culture has named and shaped these beings, but all point to the same principle. There are consciousnesses that inhabit heaven and accompany us on our earthly journey. They do not interfere directly, but inspire. They are like invisible guides, available to those who align with their vibration. In moments of despair or ecstasy, many feel their presence, a warmth, a breeze, an inexplicable certainty. These experiences are not hallucinations, but interactions with a world that has always been here, on the fringes of our attention. But why have we lost access to this world? Because fear has been installed as the gatekeeper. We were taught to fear divine judgment, to doubt our purity, to feel unworthy of light. This distortion created a chasm between humans and heaven. They made us believe that only saints, gurus, or enlightened ones can reach it. But the truth is that every human carries heaven within them. It pulses in the heart, whispers in moments of silence, and manifests when we choose truth over convenience. It is not the privilege of a few, but the right of all. Reconnecting with heaven is remembering that you are not lost, just asleep. That your essence has not been corrupted, only forgotten. Each moment you choose truth, love, presence, you align with this world. There is no mandatory ritual, nor necessary dogma, just a willingness to open up to the unseen. When you gaze at the starry sky and feel something stir within you, it's the first world touching your soul. When a phrase, a song, or silence makes you cry without explanation, it's heaven saying, "I am here, you have never been alone." And when this connection strengthens, everything changes. Choices become clearer, pains gain meaning, encounters become sacred. Not because reality has changed, but because you are seeing through the eyes of heaven. This gaze is gentle, compassionate, firm, and loving. It doesn't judge but reveals. It doesn't separate but integrates. It's with this gaze that great sages walked among us. And it's with it that you can also walk, if you decide to remember. Heaven is the world of remembering the origin, of connection with the source, and of the silent wisdom that dissolves illusions. You've already accessed this world, even if briefly, in a moment of profound gratitude, in a breath amidst the chaos, in a hug that felt eternal. Heaven is not far away, it's behind the distractions. It is the silent backdrop of existence. The good news is that it never left. It simply waited for you to look within, with courage and reverence. This is the first world because without it the others become confusing. Heaven is the compass, and when you walk with it, even the darkest valleys of life gain light. The call of heaven is not for you to flee from earth, but to see it with new eyes. It's not for you to despise matter, but to sanctify it with your presence. Heaven reveals purpose. It reminds you of who you are and what you came here to do. And when this memory takes hold, everything reorganizes around it. You stop searching outward and begin to radiate from within. The world may continue to be chaotic, but within you, a peace begins to grow. This peace is heaven settling in, and it's for this peace that any journey is worth it. The Earth, this living planet that pulses beneath our feet, is the most apparent world, yet also the most misunderstood. Throughout the centuries, many spiritual traditions have fallen into the trap of demonizing matter, treating the body and the physical world as obstacles to enlightenment. This artificial separation between spirit and flesh has created a deep wound in the collective psyche, causing the sacred to be projected away, upward, outward, and never inward into what is tangible. But true spirituality begins when we recognize that the earth is as sacred as heaven. It is the second world, not because it is inferior, but because it is the stage where the spirit manifests. Spirituality that does not embrace the material world is merely refined evasion. Since ancient times, people who lived in harmony with nature understood that everything in the physical plane carries a living intelligence. The stones, the plants, the rivers, the winds, everything had a spirit. The earth was not a resource, but a mother, a fertile womb where the divine descends to learn, experience, and evolve. This perception created entire civilizations focused on harmony with natural cycles. In indigenous cultures, walking barefoot was a form of prayer. In Eastern traditions, cultivating the land was a meditation in action. And for the alchemists, everything physical contained within it the germ of the spiritual. Each atom of matter was treated as a sacred mystery. The human body, in this context, is not a burden, but a temple. It is the vessel that allows us to experience life on this plane. And yet, how many are at war with their own body? How many deny their sensations, ignore their limits, or try to silence it with excesses and distractions? The disconnection with the earth starts with the disconnection with the body. When we don't feel, we get lost. Earth's spirituality demands presence. It demands grounding. It's not about seeking the high, but about deepening into the here and now with all senses awakened. It's in the conscious breathing, the mindful chewing, the unhurried walk that the second world reveals itself. Living on earth with awareness is realizing that everything is interconnected, that there is no action without consequence, that the way we eat, move, rest, and interact directly impacts our spiritual energy. True abundance is not having more, but feeling more. Feeling the texture of things, the scent of the air, the sound of the rain, the warmth of the sun. The earth speaks to us all the time, but its language is sensory. And in an increasingly digitized and fast-paced world, we lose the ability to listen with our bodies. Healing begins by slowing down, by remembering that we are part of a larger ecosystem, not masters of it. It is also in this world where our ancestors reside. The earth holds the memory of everything that has been lived. Each grain of sand, each tree, each animal carries within itself the history of past eras. When we reconnect with nature, we reconnect with our roots, and by honoring the cycles of the earth, the planting and harvesting, the birth and death, the day and night, we begin to remember that we too are cyclical, that there is no mistake in pausing, that there is beauty in stillness, and that even winter has its purpose. Earthly spirituality teaches us to trust in the timing of things, to respect the rhythm of life, and to understand that everything has its moment. The ancestral rituals of connecting with the earth were simple and profound. Lighting a fire with intention, offering flowers to the river, singing to the moon, sitting in silence under a tree. These gestures are not folklore. They are age-old practices of energy alignment. The earth responds when called upon with respect. It sustains us, feeds us, heals us. And the least we can do is listen to it. Many body ailments stem from neglecting this world. Anxiety, insomnia, chronic fatigue, all are signs of a body crying out for a return to the natural, to the essential, to the simple. But there is something even deeper. The earth teaches us about boundaries. Just as it has borders, cycles, and rules, so do we. When we disrespect the planet's limits, it reacts. When we exceed our own limits, we get sick. The spirituality of the earth is not expansive like that of heaven. It is contained, firm, rooted. It teaches us to say, enough, to nourish without depleting, to give without losing ourselves. In this world, we learn to distinguish what roots us from what imprisons us. Not everything that seems fixed is solid, and not everything that seems free is liberating. The earth invites discernment. In this second world, we are also confronted with emotional matter. Here, emotions take form. Anger, fear, joy, sadness. Everything manifests physically. The heart races, the stomach locks up, the muscles contract. Earth is where we feel everything, and that's why many flee from it. They prefer to live in the mental, in the astral, in the virtual, where nothing is truly touched. But healing only occurs when we dive into the body and let it tell us its stories. The body holds truths that the mind has forgotten, and it's in this dive that we find the lost integrity. To honor the earth is to honor the primordial feminine, the principle of nourishment, care, receptivity. It's about reconnecting with the womb of creation. In the mythology of various cultures, the earth goddess is the great mother. She welcomes, transforms, regenerates, but she also destroys what no longer serves. She is love, but she is firm. She is generosity, but she is justice. By reconnecting with her, we learn that there is no spirituality without responsibility, that every choice has an echo, that every action plants a seed, and that everything that grows, grows from what was cultivated. This is the world where spirituality becomes practical, where self-knowledge translates into routine, into habits, into concrete actions. It's easy to talk about light and love at retreats, during meditations, in inspiring readings. What's hard is applying that light in traffic, in relationships, at work, in food, in rest. But it's here that everything is proven. True spirituality is the one that improves the world around us, that transforms the environment, that brings beauty, that generates health. And all this begins with the body, with the earth, with the ground we walk on and the way we treat it. Earth is the only place where we can manifest heaven. Without it, ideas remain in the realm of desire. The spirit needs matter to create. Love needs gestures. Wisdom needs words. Silence needs time. Therefore, the second world is the meeting point between the invisible and the visible. It is the altar where the divine becomes form. And by reconnecting with it, we begin to see beauty where there was once haste, to feel gratitude where there was once demand, to live with presence where there was only escape before. Earth is the world of the incarnated soul, and it cries out to be remembered. The third world is the most enigmatic of all, for it is neither above nor below, but within. It inhabits the silence between thoughts, the lapses in memory, the impulses we do not understand. The subconscious is the underground world of the psyche, the field where everything that has been forgotten, repressed, or misunderstood remains alive, waiting to be revealed. This is the world of the invisible interior, of the silent currents that shape our behaviors, choices, and destinies. To ignore this world is to live at the mercy of internal forces we do not control. To dive into it is to awaken to the totality of who we truly are, even if at first, the dive is frightening. The subconscious is not the enemy, but it has been treated as such by a culture that fears depth. From an early age, we learn to hide emotions, suppress impulses, and silence pains. What is not accepted by the conscious mind descends into this inner world and remains there, creating symbols, patterns, dreams, and even diseases. Carl Jung referred to this dimension as the shadow, not because it is evil, but because it is unknown. The shadow carries everything that we were forced to deny in order to be accepted, and the more we ignore it, the more it controls us through self-sabotage, unconscious repetitions, and attraction to painful situations. Facing the shadow is an act of spiritual courage. It is looking inward without filters, without masks, and embracing what lives there. It is in this third world that unresolved traumas, old fears, hidden desires, and unexpressed gifts reside. But it is also where the archetypes that shape our psyche, childhood memories, ancestral records, and even transgenerational content dwell. The subconscious is like a vast ocean where each wave we feel today is the result of deep currents, often invisible. When we access this world with awareness, we are able to understand the secret motives behind our choices, our compulsions, and our blockages. What seemed like a personality flaw reveals itself as an undigested story, an unheard pain, a genuine impulse that was misinterpreted. Dreams are the most direct portals to this world. Each dream symbol, each image that arises during sleep is an encoded message from the subconscious. The unconscious speaks in metaphors because this is its primitive language. A fire can represent anger, passion, or purification. A house can symbolize the body, the soul, or childhood. By learning to decode these symbols, we begin to dialogue with our deepest self. Ancient cultures highly valued dreams. Shamans and priests interpreted the night signs as spiritual guides, healing maps, and future predictions. Today, in the rush of modern life, dreams are dismissed as nothing much, and with this, we lose access to one of the most potent channels of self-knowledge. But the subconscious does not only manifest itself in dreams, it also expresses itself through language slips, selective forgetfulness, repetitions of emotional patterns, and even through the body via unexplainable physical symptoms. When the conscious mind does not listen, the unconscious screams, and the scream can come in the form of anxiety, insomnia, irritability, or even chronic diseases. Therefore, listening to the subconscious is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Denying this world is like trying to build a house ignoring the ground on which it will be erected. Sooner or later, the unstable foundations will demand their price, and the price is always avoidable suffering. There are ways to access this world in a safe and revealing manner. Therapeutic writing, deep meditation, guided regressions, working with symbols, the use of oracles, Jungian analysis, and altered states of consciousness through breathing, sound, or rituals are legitimate paths for inner exploration. The goal is not to dig aimlessly, but to allow repressed content to surface and become integrated. There is no true liberation without integration. What heals is not eliminating what haunts us, but to welcome, understand, and transform it. The shadow does not want to destroy us. It wants to be loved because it carries parts of us that have been banished, but are essential for our wholeness. The subconscious is also the space where creativity is born. Great artists, inventors, and visionaries have accessed this world to bring to the physical plane ideas that seem to come from nowhere. But this nowhere is, in fact, the unnamed everything. When we allow this world to express itself, we touch the intangible, the sublime, what is beyond logic. The greatest poems, paintings, music, and scientific discoveries have sprung from states where the conscious mind was at rest and the subconscious flourished. It is in this fertile ground where the most potent insights, the deepest healings, and the most sincere connections with the invisible reside. However, navigating this world requires preparation. Not everything that inhabits the subconscious is ready to be seen all at once. Opening this portal without anchoring can cause more confusion than clarity. Therefore, the path of self-investigation needs to be done with compassion, patience, and support when necessary. The ego, when confronted with contents too deep, can defend itself more rigidly, creating resistances. The key is to proceed gradually, with loving listening, recognizing that each layer accessed is, in itself, a victory. The journey to the third world is less about answers and more about the right questions. When heaven represents spiritual clarity and earth the physical presence, the subconscious is the emotional mystery. It is the bridge between worlds, the portal that allows the spirit to incarnate deeply and matter to be inhabited with meaning. To ignore this world is to live superficially. To integrate it is to access levels of freedom that do not depend on external circumstances. It is in this world that we heal not only our pains, but the pains of our ancestors. It is where we rescue parts of the soul that were trapped in past experiences. It is where we untangle the knots that prevent life's fluidity. This is a journey that everyone is destined to undertake at some point. For some, it begins after a crisis. For others, through an inexplicable calling. But everyone, at some point, will be confronted with this internal mirror. Life, with its silent wisdom, always leads us inward. When we deny this call, the pain intensifies. When we accept it, even with fear, something begins to reorganize. The internal chaos starts to make sense. The sorrow becomes a river that cleanses. The anger, an energy that protects. The fear, an invitation to caution. Everything gains a voice. Everything finds a place. And as we dive into this third world, we become whole. We cease to be only what we show to the world, and we also become what we feel, what we fear, what we desire, and what we still do not understand. There is no illumination without descent, and there is no rise without integration. The true spiritual path passes through the subconscious because it is there that the sacred meets the human. It is in the dark that the seed germinates. It is in silence that the word prepares itself. It is in chaos that the soul finds its form. And it is in the deep that life begins to make sense. Long before the invention of the printing press, long before modern libraries or digital platforms, there were manuscripts, sacred records handwritten, often under extreme conditions, by consecrated hands that knew they were preserving something that could not be forgotten. What few know is that among these records, there was a singular manuscript, lost in time, whose words whispered the secrets of the integration of the three worlds: heaven, earth, and subconsciousness. It was not just a spiritual text. It was a coded map of the human soul, a manual that explained how to fully activate the divine potential of the being. This manuscript did not disappear by chance. It was hidden, hunted, burned, and safeguarded because it revealed what control systems feared the most: an awakened and whole human being. Several civilizations have referenced it under different names, shapes, and fragments. In ancient Egypt, parts of its content appear in the Emerald Tablets, attributed to the Master Thoth. These tablets contained codes about the invisible worlds, universal laws, and ascension practices. In the East, the Indian Upanishads spoke of a transcendental truth, a path of integration between the body, mind, and spirit. The Essenes, a mystical people from the Judean desert, preserved for generations a similar knowledge that would later surface with the Dead Sea Scrolls, revealing instructions on fasting, meditation, purification, and connection with the subtle worlds. And even among the Amerindian peoples, the shamans kept oral narratives that mirrored the manuscript's content, myths that united heaven, earth, and the spirits of the unconscious. Why was this knowledge persecuted? Because it didn't require intermediaries. It didn't demand temples, priests, or dogmas. It taught that each human being was the temple, the priest, and the divinity. And this deeply threatened power structures. Institutionalized religions, empires, political systems, and even scientific paradigms violently dealt with any knowledge that empowered the individual to the point of making them free. Burning books was more than destroying paper. It was erasing keys to liberation. The manuscript of the three worlds, whether in its literal or symbolic form, was torn apart and scattered so that it would never be fully assembled again. But its fragments survived. They are in the between the lines of sacred texts, in the chants of shamans, in the secret rituals of alchemists, in the parables of spiritual masters, and even in the popular myths that we hear without understanding. In times of spiritual repression, the true initiates knew that the only way to preserve this knowledge was to inscribe it within the human soul. Thus, the oral tradition was born, the rites of passage, the coded myths. The manuscript became a living field of wisdom that can be accessed not only by reading but by direct experience. Therefore, many of those who awaken today do not do so because they have read something external, but because something internal has been activated. It's as if the code that had been dormant began to vibrate again. Memories that are not individual but collective emerge from the depths of consciousness. This is how the lost manuscript resurfaces, within each being who chooses to remember. There are enigmatic reports from various parts of the planet about initiates who, in their altered states of consciousness, claim to have accessed this book on subtle planes. They describe it as a codex of light with words that vibrate, that change according to the intention of the reader. Others see it as a living geometry, a mandala that contains within itself all the essential truths. There are also those who perceive it as sound, a frequency that, when heard, realigns the being with its origin. Regardless of the form, the consensus among these reports is the same. The manuscript is not just information, it is activation. It does not explain, it transforms. Those who have touched it, even in a glimpse, report profound changes in their bodies, emotions, and perceptions. They feel more alive, more aware, more connected to everything. They begin to see the hidden patterns of reality, to feel deep empathy for all beings, to perceive that everything is interconnected. It's not just any mystical experience. It's the reintegration of the soul with its entirety. It's the memory of what we were before we were shaped by fear, by ego, and by the culture of forgetting. The manuscript, in this sense, is not just a text. It's the soul itself, unveiling itself. Interestingly, various modern spiritual currents talk about a descent of codes or activation of archetypes in this time we live in. This is not a coincidence. We are in an era of collective remembrance. The lost manuscript begins to reconstruct within us because the time has come, and each person who awakens, who heals, who integrates their inner worlds, becomes a living page of this manuscript. The book will no longer be found in caves, tombs, or secret archives. It is being rewritten in the hearts of those who choose to become bridges between heaven, earth, and the subconscious. However, to access it, one must take the reverse path. Unlearn, undo, untangle. Everything we've been led to believe about the world, about ourselves, about time and reality, needs to be put on hold. The manuscript cannot be read with the eyes of a conditioned mind. It demands absolute presence, sincere surrender, radical humility. It requires us to acknowledge that we don't know, that we are willing to walk without a map, trusting only in our inner compass. Those who seek the manuscript with arrogance or superficial curiosity encounter only silence, but those who approach with reverence and a desire for truth find gateways. These portals are not far away. They open up in synchronicities that leave us breathless, in encounters that change the course of life, in moments when something inside us screams, "This is true," even without being able to explain it. When this happens, it's the manuscript whispering, "You are on the path." Each person, each book, each meditation, each shadow faced becomes a clue, a line, a letter of the original text, and what was scattered begins to align, like a mosaic that recomposes itself, like a sound that re-emerges after millennia of silence. Therefore, this is not a search for an object, but for a state. It's not about finding a book, but becoming the book. Being a human being whose thoughts, emotions, and actions express wisdom. Being a convergence point between the divine and the human. Being a living witness that true knowledge never dies. It only changes form. The manuscript of the three worlds is testament to this. It survived destruction because it multiplied into seeds. And each one who rediscovers it becomes fertile ground for it to bloom again, stronger, more whole, more universal than it ever was. Human existence is marked by doors that either open or remain sealed, and within each of these doors lies a key. These are not physical keys, but symbolic, vibrational, invisible to the casual glance. They do not belong to distant temples or inaccessible masters, but are present within each being, waiting for the right touch to turn what was locked. The three keys, as they were called by ancient initiates, are living tools capable of activating the integration between the three worlds, heaven, earth, and subconscious. They are not poetic metaphors. They are practices, frequencies, and inner postures that, when accessed consciously, radically alter the way a human being perceives, feels, and moves in the world. They are doors to lost totality. The first key is conscious silence. Unlike the absence of sound, conscious silence is a vibrational state in which the mind ceases its chatter and surrenders to deep listening. It is in this silence that heaven manifests itself, not with words, but with impressions, visions, and intuitions that descend like threads of light. Ancient masters knew this. They would sit for hours in caves, deserts, or forests just to be silent. They were not seeking rational answers, but alignment with the rhythm of the cosmos. Today, the modern world fears silence. Noise has become an addiction, a distraction, an anesthetic. But without inner silence, no true listening occurs. The first key requires the courage to pause, face the void, and allow the invisible to speak. The second key is bodily presence. It belongs to the domain of earth. It's not enough to be alive, one must inhabit the body. This means feeling deeply, occupying each gesture, perceiving the subtle signals that the body emits at every moment. Bodily presence is not limited to conscious movement, but includes care with food, sleep, touch, and natural cycles. When we fully inhabit the body, we become purer channels for the divine. It is through the body that the spirit acts. To despise the body in the name of an ethereal spirituality is to mutilate the very bridge between worlds. The second key demands grounding. It requires being whole where the feet touch, looking deeply, breathing with intention, living each moment as sacred. The third key is symbolic listening, which belongs to the world of the subconscious. It is the art of deciphering the hidden codes that manifest in dreams, repetitions, intuitions, and symptoms. The unconscious speaks all the time, but in its own language. Symbolic listening is the willingness to translate these messages, to open oneself to the possibility that nothing is by chance. A recurring animal in dreams, a repeated phrase, an unexplainable feeling in front of someone, everything is a symbol. Shamans, oracles, and archetypal therapists have always known this. The inner world speaks through images and patterns. Listening to it requires sensitivity, but also discipline. Without symbolic listening, the unconscious remains a chaotic territory. With it, it becomes a living library. These three keys do not operate in isolation. They activate together like gears in a subtle mechanism. Silence prepares the field for listening. Physical presence anchors what is revealed. Symbolic listening decodes and guides the next steps. Together, they form a circuit of reconnection. When used regularly, the keys initiate a process of inner alchemy. Heavy emotions begin to transform into creative strength. Repetitive mental patterns give way to clarity. Physical symptoms soften. The being begins to operate at a new rhythm, more aligned with its essence. It's not about magic, but about alignment with subtle laws that have always been active, just waiting for someone to recognize them. For these keys to be effective, it is necessary to develop three corresponding disciplines: meditation, breathing, and intention. Meditation upholds silence, not as a technique, but as a state of being. It trains the mind to rest, not to react, to observe. Breathing connects bodily presence. Each inhalation and exhalation become acts of returning to the now. Breathing deeply is more than oxygenating, it is affirming one's existence. And intention organizes the symbolic content of the subconscious. When we set clear intention, we give direction to energy, and the inner world responds more accurately. Without intention, the signals become confused. With intention, everything arranges itself like a revealed puzzle. Many fail when trying to access these worlds because they attempt to open the doors in haste, curiosity, or a desire for power. But the keys do not respond to these vibrations. They only activate with humility, consistency, and love. It's not enough to try to meditate or test symbolic listening. It's necessary to cultivate these postures as daily practices, as internal offerings to the sacred. The modern world has trained us for quick results, but the inner realm operates on a different time scale. It responds to depth, not speed. The integration of the three worlds is not an event, it's a process, and the keys are the tools that support this path. It is common that when starting this process, resistances arise. The mind rebels against the silence. The body evades presence. The unconscious hides behind masks. This is part of the journey. The resistances are not obstacles, but signs that the transformation has begun. Each time we persist, even in the face of inertia, something moves. Something that was dormant awakens, and this awakening is gradual, but irreversible. The more we use the keys, the more internal doors open, and what once seemed unreachable begins to become familiar. Peace, clarity, and vitality do not come from outside, but emerge from within, like flowers blooming after a long winter. Keys also act as filters. They help us discern what resonates with our essence from what distracts us from it. In silence, we perceive which voices are true. In presence, we feel which paths nourish or drain. In symbolic listening, we recognize the warnings and confirmations that the universe sends us. Thus, we stop being victims of chance and become conscious co-creators of our reality. Each decision begins to have an internal foundation. Each step, a clearer purpose. And even in uncertainties, we feel that we are being guided by something greater, something that knows us better than we ourselves do. The use of these keys is not an end in itself. They are tools for something greater, the remembrance of totality. When we operate with them, we cease to identify solely with the mind, the body, or the emotion. We begin to inhabit a state of unity where everything is integrated. Heaven, earth, and the subconscious stop being concepts and become living experiences. Spirituality becomes the body, matter becomes sacred, the unconscious becomes the master. And at this point, we no longer seek answers outside. We know that everything we need is already here, waiting only for us to open the right door with the right key at the right time. The journey of the initiate is not a fantasy reserved for monks in caves, shamans in forests, or reclusive mystics. It is, in fact, an archetypal cycle that every human being experiences, consciously or unconsciously, throughout their existence. It is the internal call that breaks the routine, the restlessness that will not be silenced, the discomfort that arises when the old is no longer enough. The initiate is the one who, instead of running from the call, responds. He is not more enlightened, purer, or better prepared. He is simply the one who said yes. And by saying this yes, the world begins to reorganize. Nothing remains the same, because everything that was hidden begins to emerge. The journey then begins, not with lights and glories, but with deconstruction, silence, and listening. What dies first is the ego that believed it controlled reality. At the beginning of the journey, there is confusion. The ancient mind tries to understand with old tools what the soul is proposing. Logic demands explanations, fear requires guarantees, and the outside world often mocks the awakening. It's common for the initiate to feel alone, as if they are crossing a desert without a map. This is necessary. The journey begins precisely when everything that was known no longer makes sense. The comfort zone is left behind not because the initiate rejects it, but because it dissolves in the face of the new vibration born within them. It's in this phase that the seeker encounters the first signs, small synchronicities, vivid dreams, unexpected meetings, and sensations that there's something more. These signs are the harbinger of the break, the first portal of the journey. With the progress of the journey, the initiate finds their guides. They are not always visible or physical. Sometimes they appear as books, movies, phrases, symbols, or even as children and elders who, with a word or gesture, awaken something essential. These guides do not offer a ready-made path. They light the way so that the initiate can see their own terrain. The true guide does not create dependence, but autonomy. They reflect the greatness that lies dormant. It is also at this point that the first practices begin to make sense. Deep meditations, internal listening, fasting, cleansing rituals, silent retreats. The initiate begins to understand that spirituality is a constant practice, not an extraordinary event. But no profound journey occurs without confrontation. After the first glimpses comes the fall. The shadow rises, the unresolved traumas, the forgotten fears, the ancestral pains, everything that had been avoided until then resurfaces with force. The dark night of the soul is not a dramatic metaphor. It is a spiritual reality where everything seems to collapse. Relationships fall apart, old goals lose their meaning, and even the body can become ill in response to the internal chaos. This phase is feared because it makes us feel lost, but it is precisely in it that the greatest leap occurs. The shadow does not come to punish, but to purify. The initiate is tested, their faith is refined, their intention is honed. The fire of suffering is, paradoxically, the crucible of transformation. Those who traverse this night emerge with a new vision. The world has not changed, but their perspective has. The initiate realizes that there is beauty where they once saw pain, that there is wisdom where they once saw defeat. The ego begins to give way to the higher self. Silent gratitude arises, not for the easy moments, but for the scars that taught them. It is at this stage that the initiate begins to spontaneously reconnect with the three worlds. Heaven speaks more clearly. The earth becomes more sensitive. The subconscious is no longer an abyss, but a fertile field of revelations. There are moments of ecstasy, not out of escapism, but because of presence. Moments when everything seems to vibrate with a profound meaning, as if the entire universe is breathing in unison with the initiate. This phase of clarity, however, is not the end. It is merely the maturation of the being. From here, the initiate ceases to seek spiritual experiences to become a channel of the sacred. He understands that he is not here to ascend and escape from the world, but to serve the world with more awareness. The journey becomes a mission. The vocation is revealed. He may be a therapist, artist, teacher, gardener, engineer, or family man. The external form matters little. What matters is that everything is now done with presence, compassion, and integrity. Every gesture, a prayer. Every word, an instrument of alignment. Spirituality ceases to be individual practice and becomes collective service. Over time, the initiate develops a new relationship with time. They no longer live under the yoke of haste. They understand that there is a greater rhythm, a cosmic synchrony that guides each step. They learn to wait, to listen, to act at the right time. Time ceases to be a tyrant and becomes an ally. The seasons of the soul begin to be respected. When it's time to plant, they plant. When it's time to harvest, they harvest. When it's time to be silent, they silence. This wisdom of rhythm is one of the greatest achievements of the journey. It brings peace, resilience, and clarity. The initiate no longer despairs in the face of crises. They recognize them as necessary phases of the spiral of evolution. Throughout the journey, the initiate also develops a symbolic view of reality. Nothing is literal anymore. Everything is a message, an encounter, a loss, an illness, a dream, a delay. All can be interpreted as divine signs. This way of seeing the world allows him to live lightly, even in the face of adversity. Life becomes a continuous school, and he sees himself not as a passive student, but as a co-creator of his learning. This awareness transforms pain into power, mistakes into tools, and the past into seeds. The initiate learns to walk with mystery, without the need to control or understand everything. He lives surrender, not as resignation, but as an art. This journey also awakens a new type of loneliness. No longer the loneliness of abandonment, but that of the sacred silence between worlds. The initiate understands that there are aspects of the path that only they can tread. No matter how many masters surround them, how many books they read, or how many practices they carry out, there are places in the soul that are exclusive. And it is there, in these corners, that they encounter God. Not an external God, but the God who dwells at the center of their being. It is in this encounter that the initiate becomes, themselves, a beacon. Not because they want to guide others, but because their inner light can no longer be contained. It radiates, and wherever it reaches, it awakens. Over time, others will seek him out, and he will realize that now it is he who carries the guide's baton. But the true initiate never places himself above others. He leads with humility. He shares his path without imposing. He does not create followers. He awakens seekers. His presence is medicine. His listening is healing. His silence is teaching. He knows that the journey never ends, but it becomes smoother, more integrated. With each cycle, he is reborn with more love, more truth, more service. He no longer seeks personal liberation, but collective liberation. And that's why his life becomes the greatest teaching. In the end, he understands that everything, absolutely everything, was worth it. Each tear, each loss, each fear faced. Because it was through them that he remembered himself. The initiate is no longer the same. He has become the way, the truth, and the life. He integrated the three worlds and now walks with them, within him. Wherever he goes, he carries heaven, earth, and subconsciousness in perfect harmony. He is the living manuscript, he is the bridge, and with each step he takes, he builds a new world around him, a world where others can also remember and awaken. The return to the whole is not a geographical or linear return, but a vibrational reintegration. It is not about returning to a physical place, but returning to an original state of consciousness, where all parts meet again as one. After crossing heaven, inhabiting the earth, and illuminating the subconscious, the initiate understands that these worlds were never truly separated. The division was an illusion created by the fragmented mind, fueled by centuries of cultural and spiritual conditioning. The whole is not a sum of parts, It is a pulsating unity prior to fragmentation. To return to it is to remember that we have never ceased to be complete. It is to awaken to a reality where everything vibrates in sync with everything. At this stage, the initiate's perception changes radically. They no longer see separations between matter and spirit, between light and shadow, between individual and collective. They live in a state of integration where the rigid boundaries of the ego dissolve. Suffering does not disappear, but its meaning changes. Pain, when it appears, is seen as part of the flow of life, as a messenger and not as an enemy. Emotions are navigated with awareness, no longer with reactivity. Thoughts cease to be tyrants and become allies. The body is honored as an extension of the soul. Everything is embraced, everything is welcome. This is the state of the whole, an expanded consciousness that embraces imperfection as a path to refining the essence. The linear mind bows before the unified field. Time loses its rigidity. The past is redefined, the future ceases to be a threat, and the present expands like an infinite space. The initiate learns to inhabit the now with such depth that each moment becomes eternal. It is in this space that coincidences become synchronicities, where the ordinary reveals its extraordinary character. A glance, a falling leaf, the song of a bird, everything carries meaning. Reality ceases to be a random sequence of events and begins to be recognized as a dance orchestrated by an intelligence that is in everything, including itself. The return to the whole also reveals the dimension of unconditional love. Not romantic or idealized love, but love that sees and accepts the other as an extension of oneself. Judgment dissolves. Comparison loses its meaning. Competition becomes cooperation. This love doesn't need to be demonstrated. It is felt, radiated, emanated like an invisible perfume. It transforms the environment effortlessly because it is true. The presence of the initiate becomes medicinal. Their listening heals. Their silence guides. They no longer need to convince anyone of anything. Their life is the testimony. They do not speak about the whole. They are the whole in action. At this point, spiritual practices change their function. They cease to be means of pursuit and become expressions of gratitude. Meditation is no longer for finding peace, it's for honoring it. Taking care of the body is no longer a duty, it's a celebration. Serving others is no longer a sacrifice, it's a natural response to inner overflow. The initiate no longer seeks ascension. He descends with compassion into the world to be a bridge between dimensions. He becomes an agent of balance, a restorer of lost connections, a caretaker of spaces where the sacred has been forgotten. Reintegration with the whole also brings a new relationship with creation. The initiate realizes that they are a co-creator of reality. They are no longer at the mercy of life's winds, they blow along with them. Their thoughts align with their intention, their actions with their purpose, their vibration with the source. They begin to manifest with greater clarity, speed, and precision. Dreams come true not through effort, but through attunement. They have learned not to beg the universe like a beggar, but to declare like an emissary of the divine. Their words carry weight, their silence has depth, their presence has direction. In this state, he also understands that everything has a soul. The stone, the water, the fire, the air, everything lives. Everything responds. The separation between nature and human being disappears. He feels part of a vast network of living intelligence. He converses with the trees, with the animals, with the elements, and doesn't feel strange for doing so. He listens to the winds as if heeding advice. He reads the rivers as if deciphering a poem. He touches the earth as if embracing his own mother. This state of radical communion is not daydreaming. It's a return to the forgotten truth. It's the direct experience of the unity that has always been here, hidden beneath layers of illusion. The return to the whole does not mean that the initiate will no longer suffer or make mistakes. They remain human. They still feel, still fall, still get lost at times. But now they know how to return. They know how to listen to life. They know there is a center within themselves that never wavers, and it's this center that guides them back, always. They have learned to trust the invisible, to rest in the mystery, to proceed without knowing. Control has given way to surrender, Rigidity has made room for fluidity. Doubt has transformed into sacred curiosity. They no longer seek to dominate life, but to dance with it. This dance is the whole itself moving through them. At this stage, he becomes a mirror for others, not because he is superior, but because his wholeness resonates and reminds others of what they too are. His light does not dazzle, it illuminates. His wisdom does not teach, it awakens. He no longer desires to save the world, but to be present in it with such truth that his presence becomes a seed of change. He does not need to talk about the three worlds, he embodies them. Where he is, heaven manifests. Where he steps, the earth flourishes. Where he breathes, the subconscious becomes peaceful. He is the bridge between what seemed separate. He is the link, the thread, the channel. The return to the whole is also the recognition of the complete cycle. The initiate understands that every end is a new beginning, that every light emerged from darkness, that each loss prepared a rebirth. He looks back without regret. He looks forward without anxiety. He looks within with love, and in this gaze, time dissolves, as does fear, the desire for control. Everything is as it should be, everything is in place, and he is finally at home, not in a physical place but in a state of consciousness where everything pulses as part of a single heart. This return, however, is not an endpoint. It's a new beginning. Now, with the three worlds integrated, with the keys activated, with the journey experienced, the initiate is ready to live fully, no longer as one who seeks, but as one who offers. He becomes a guardian of the invisible, a gardener of the sacred, a cultivator of presence. Where there was struggle before, now there is flow. Where there was scarcity, now there is abundance. Where there was separation, now there is communion. The whole lives through him, and he finally lives with everything. The new humanity is not an idealized utopia, nor a distant future reserved for the chosen ones. It is a movement that has already begun, silent, underground, irreversible. It is the emergence of a new state of collective consciousness, woven by souls who have decided to remember, integrate, and live the three worlds. This humanity is not defined by technology, material advancement, or political achievements. It is born from the spiritual maturity of individuals who have ceased to project their conflicts onto the world and have begun to resolve them within themselves. The new humanity emerges when ordinary human beings choose to live with presence, intention, and truth, making each gesture a bridge between heaven, earth, and the subconscious. It does not arrive with external revolutions, but with internal transformations, and it is spreading, person by person, heart by heart. In this new paradigm, the idea of separation dissolves. There's no longer us and them. No more war between science and spirituality, reason and emotion, body and soul. The new humanity recognizes that everything is interconnected. Each choice affects the whole. There's no longer room to live on autopilot, nor to repeat patterns that harm the earth, others, or oneself. The new consciousness is ecological, because it understands that the planet is a living organism that mirrors our inner state. It is compassionate, because it recognizes that another's pain is also its own. It is intuitive, because it has learned to listen to the invisible. This humanity will not be imposed by decrees. It will be revealed by the living example of those who choose to be whole. The structures of the old consciousness are crumbling. Systems based on control, domination, scarcity, and fear are collapsing because they can no longer sustain the new vibration growing in the world. Religions that demand submission without understanding are losing followers. Governments that prioritize profit over life are facing resistance. Corporations that destroy the sacred are being challenged by conscious movements. The new humanity does not deny the chaos. It recognizes it as part of the birthing process. Every transition brings pain, but this pain now is fertile. It does not paralyze, it propels. Those who awaken realize that they did not come to escape Earth, but to regenerate it with their light. This humanity does not dress in titles or appearances. It manifests itself in daily attitudes. It's in the father who learns to listen to his children with an open heart, in the woman who honors her body as a temple, in the young person who questions the dominant narrative and chooses to forge their own path. in the elder who shares wisdom instead of lamenting time. It's in the therapist who sees each patient as a sacred soul, in the farmer who plants with respect for the earth's cycles, in the artist who channels profound visions into their work. Each one, by living with internal consistency, becomes a node of light in this large vibrational network that already connects the beings of the new humanity. There will be no official announcement. There will be no flag or anthem. The new humanity does not organize itself like armies or parties. It pulses like a living consciousness, crossing borders and beliefs. It grows where there is silence, where there is truth, where there is love without negotiation. It strengthens in the pauses, in retreats, in spontaneous dances, in sincere prayers, in shared tears. It is an invisible community that recognizes itself through the look, the frequency, the presence. A look of knowing, a frequency that elevates, a presence that heals without effort. These are the signs of those who already live in the new era. And this new era does not exclude mistakes. It turns them into masters. In the new humanity, there is no demand for perfection, but for authenticity. Making mistakes is part of the process. Falling, stumbling, doubting. Everything is welcome when there is awareness. What dissolves is the lie, the manipulation, the fear that paralyzes. Each mistake is embraced as an opportunity for self-understanding. Shame gives way to humility. Guilt transmutes into responsibility, and judgment transforms into compassionate discernment. This new humanity lives with an exposed heart, but with deep roots. It is vulnerable and powerful at the same time. Education is changing. It's not just about teaching content anymore, but consciousness. Children are treated as seeds of wisdom, not vessels to be shaped. Schools are becoming spaces for connection, not obedience. Art is freeing itself from labels and returning as a channel for healing, revelation, and expansion. Health is not limited to medicine, but includes energetic, emotional, and spiritual care. Politics is no longer a theater of power, but an expression of service. The economy reconnects with natural abundance, and money returns to being a flow, not a prison. The new humanity redesigns all systems because it is born from a completely different internal foundation. And this foundation is the integrated experience of the three worlds. The sky as a source of inspiration and purpose, the earth as a field of action and materialization, the subconscious as a repository of wisdom and transformation. The new humanity is not satisfied with fragmented spirituality. It wants body, it wants ground, it wants integrated shadow. It no longer wants to idealize, but to live. It no longer wants to escape, but to embody. It no longer wants promises for after death, but a living presence in the now. It understands that enlightenment is not the end, but the beginning of true service, living with soul in a world that has forgotten its own. That's why every awakened being is so important, because they carry the spark of change. It's not about convincing others, but living in such a coherent, deep, loving way that your life becomes a silent call for others to awaken as well. The world doesn't need more speeches, it needs more examples. And every person who aligns with their truth, who chooses presence, who honors their internal process, becomes part of the new humanity. And the more this consciousness expands, the more the old system loses strength, not by the force of opposition, but by the vibration of overcoming. This is the humanity that walks with its feet on the earth, its heart in the heavens, and its eyes turned inward. It builds not for conquest, but for coherence. It loves not out of need, but out of overflowing. It heals not by technique, but by presence. It lives not for survival, but for celebration. The new humanity will not be known for the books it writes, but for the fields it cultivates, the lives it touches, the light it sustains amidst the darkness. It does not need to be recognized. It already is. And it is growing right now in the hearts of those who dare to be bridges between worlds. Thus the cycle comes to a close. The manuscript is no longer lost. It lives, breathes, moves. Not on the pages of a hidden scroll, but in the soul of those who chose to remember. The path between heaven, earth, and subconscious has been revealed. The keys have been handed over. The journey has been undertaken. The integration has been experienced. And now, a new era begins. Not outside of us, but through us. The new humanity is the seed, the fruit, and the tree. And you, who have read up to this point, are part of it. The choice has been made. The memory has been activated. And the time is now. Before you leave, I want to invite you to something powerful. Mind Unfettered. Now it's up to you. Which of the three worlds impacted you most on this journey? Do you feel more connected to heaven, more rooted in earth, or ready to dive into your subconscious? Share with us in the comments. Your story may touch others and awaken even more dormant minds. We are creating a collective vibrational field here, and every comment is a living spark in the manifestation of this new humanity. Let's co-create this new world together, starting with your story, your listening, your courage to express yourself. Now, if this journey has shaken you, expanded you, and prepared you to go even deeper, you need to continue. The next step is already on your screen. The Book of 33 Steps, the hidden map, Jesus left for enlightenment. A revealing dive into the spiritual codes left by Jesus, hidden for centuries, and now resurfacing as part of this great awakening. Click and watch now. You will understand why what seemed lost has always been within you. You are a part of it, Mind Unfettered. The journey is just beginning.